we are live here, but you can hold on. Let me get Instagram going. Oh, come on. Go live, go live. I hate Instagram. We need to integrate better.
Every time.
There we go. All right, now we're live. All right, shall we get this party started? I'm gonna mash one more button and we can go.
Mash it, honey. Mash it.
Do it.
Hi, I'm Rick.
I'm Dan.
I'm George.
I'm Jake.
And we are Queer Magnolias,
the podcast.
In each episode,
We're going to talk about everything from growing up queer in the South
to the issues affecting our community today.
with a little bit of fabulous sprinkled in along the way,
Join us for an all-you-can-eat buffet of queer joy,
mixed in with the occasional bitch fest.
But always served
with
the
the
spiciest tea.
Hi, and welcome back.
Welcome back.
Hello.
Oh, look. I was going to say Jake is back, but Jake is not here. It's not Jake.
No, it's not Jake this week, as a matter of fact. I know we've been gone for a couple of weeks, but we're back now, and we have a special guest with us tonight. So tonight, we are very excited to welcome none other than Noah. I'm going to mess it up. I know I'm going to mess it up because I thought about it too hard. Noah Meckert, right?
Mackert, yeah.
Mackert, there we go. If I don't write this down, I always screw it up. That's the way it is. Anyway, Noah has recently served as the Director of Academic Intervention and Language Acquisition at Alliance College Ready Public Schools in LA, which is a network of about 26 charter schools. And he has a career that has began in 2003. He spent 11 years teaching middle school special education and 7th grade reading, writing, and remedial literacy. Why are you here? Boy, are you in the wrong place. Anyway, welcome to the show.
I don't know. I feel like some remedial reading and writing could go really well in this group of people.
It might be needed. How about that? I don't know how well it's going to go over, but it's definitely needed.
Exactly.
So, Noah, can you explain what that very long title of what you do now is? Because I
thought I had a long title at work. Yeah.
That was one of those titles that instead of a promotion, I got a little more title, I think is what happened. But so I was Director of Academic Intervention, was really about helping students who had trouble in school, especially in middle school and in high school, where things really start to matter a lot. If you're starting to fail your classes, it really matters. I did a lot of teaching teachers how to teach kids how to read, because believe it or not, there are in every middle and high school that I have ever worked in, kids who really have trouble reading, just the basics of reading, sounding words out fast. So I did that, and it was very good work. And then language acquisition was instruction for English learners, which in Los Angeles is quite a lot of kids. Yeah. But now my title is homemaker, because I have stepped away from that role.
Cheers.
Cheers to
that.
that.
I love that. So I will tell a little story, just a quick one. There was
shocking. That is shocking, Dan.
No, it's shocking if it can be quick.
Yeah.
So one of the boys in my neighborhood growing up, who was about 3 years older than I am, what do you call him? The principal. I was going to say janitor. Sorry, the principal of the high school.
Equally powerful.
Right. The principal called his parents in the day before graduation and said, "Your son cannot read, but would you like him to graduate or not?" Right. And I was I think now I'm assuming perhaps he was dyslexic. I don't know. But how do you get to the 12th grade and not be able to read? And I think I'm going to be able to ask you that, Noah, because obviously you've seen this before. Is that right?
Well, Noah, before you answer, I just
No
want
one's going to
point
let
out-
you talk tonight, Noah. You had your moment. You had your 30 seconds. That's it.
Thanks so much for
I'll
being
just
here.
savor it. That's all right.
If you've never seen an episode of our show, you'll know this is how it's going to go. All night.
I just want to point out that Dan's story did take place during the Depression and the Dust Bowl. So keep that in mind.
Well, yes. And also, it was not Rick that I went to school with, just so we're clear.
No, Rick is not three years older than no one's 3 years older than Danny, except maybe this guy.
Well,
This is what happens whenever I talk to somebody about this job. I hear stories like that, though, Dan. I really do. I mean, it is widespread from the 1930s and
Really?
still today, even though, honestly, we figured out how to do this really in like the 40s and the 50s. Anybody can learn how to read. But it's like this secret knowledge that sort of went out of style. I mean, teaching phonics, that's a big part of it. It's not the whole thing, but that part of it just like went out of style for several decades. And unfortunately, special education didn't have the answers either somehow. I don't know how, honestly. But yeah, many times I would sit down with a 15-year-old and have a word list, and they wouldn't be able to finish the first 10. And they're supposed to be able to read, all of them. And it's just heartbreaking. Some kids are amazing at hiding it. Amazing. I mean, truly astounding intelligence. And it's not correlated with intelligence. Dyslexia is a separate thing. And it cuts across class and income and race, but it's just out there. Some people think about 15% of kids have trouble.
wow.
And I would think too, depending on where you grow up, but I also think about where we grew. Well, I can't speak for the other two, but for me, where I grew up, there was a lot of, well, we're not going to deal with it. We're just going to pass them along and move them on to the next one. And I did see a certain degree of that. And there were some students in my class with me. I was like, how did you make it? I don't know how you got here, because you never show up. You never do homework. You never know the answers to anything, but yet you keep, promoting to the next grade.
Leveling up, right? Leveling up.
Well, enough about that. Let's talk about me for a moment.
Okay.
I want us to talk about, because you taught middle school, which I think has got to have been the hardest grades of all ever for me.
Yes.
Like, that is when kids become the meanest. And if you are visually and obviously queer, they make your life hell.
Bang, bang, bang.
Yeah. So
But I don't want to say queer though. I want to say different, because I don't know that it happens just to queer kids. I think it happens to anybody, because I was always friends with the weird kids, right? And a lot of the people I was friends with were never queer, but they always dressed different and they acted different. There's the goth girl that always wore black. So I don't know that it was queer so much as just different and from the norm.
sure, I can't speak to their experience. I can speak to mine for sure. But those kids are mean, Noah. Why would you want to teach middle school?
I didn't want to teach middle school. I just checked the box saying I'd be willing to do it.
Mm.
And that's it.
And
Fine,
they
you're doing it.
And here we are.
Here's a sucker. We'll take him right here, sucker.
I mean, when I got to the Bronx, they had a teacher shortage, specifically in middle school. There's always a teacher shortage in middle school. People leave there the most. And it's
Burned
true.
out.
Like, it's kind of a joke. Like, oh, that was a rough time of life. But it really is actually a rough time of life. I just stayed with it. It almost became like whiskey or black coffee, or like, you just got used to like the real unfiltered difficulty of it, and then you couldn't.
Well, now
It
you're
was-
talking my language. Let me take
Fifth grade was too easy. I mean, they knew how to tie their shoes and blow their nose and stuff. You didn't have to do any of that, which was nice. And then in high school, kids are great and they can like thank you eloquently, but you don't really know what's going on in high school. Kids correctly put a wall up and they stop just saying whatever's on their mind. In seventh grade, they just say what is on their mind. They'll just tell you. And it can hurt your feelings. And it hurts other people's feelings, but it seems like some kind of necessary process that they go through. And I don't know, I started to like it.
Wow.
Well, and I think also between, in childhood, maybe even in elementary school, we we really don't have very many responsibilities. Somebody calls most of the shots. Somebody makes our lunch for us. Somebody helps us get dressed. Somebody puts us on the school bus, and somebody drives the bus to school. In middle school, we begin to have hormones and then begin to think for ourselves. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, I don't like what you picked out for me to wear today, and I don't want to eat that for lunch. And all of these things begin to come up. And I'm assuming the same things come up because I know they did for me. I know my 6th grade teacher put on my report card, never has a problem talking, talks too much, which was not,
Again,
that was not
shocking. Shocking.
That was not the first time that happened. It happened a lot. So, you know, I had endless
So
questions.
let Noah answer.
I didn't ask a question,
What's
Rick.
this question?
Be precise. I didn't ask a question. I
Well,
was
get to
telling
it.
the
Get
story.
to it, lady.
Oh,
I'm circling this airport now for about 20 minutes. Going to bring this in for a landing.
yes, I do. So, did you find middle school or high school more rewarding to teach?
I mean, I was more tired at the end of the day. Happy hour meant more to me in middle school. You know, my head hit the pillow and I was like, well, I've done all I can. That's all I've got. High school, honestly, lots of fun, but different, really different. 5th grade, I taught for a little bit. That's the end of elementary, before kids kind of wake up, before they
5th is the
realize they don't have
worst.
to do.
5th is the worst. I don't
yeah.
know. Did anybody like 5th grade? I hated 5th grade.
I loved it.
Of course you would have.
Sometimes the early developers hate 5th grade and then they figure it out early, but it kind of
The
6th
slow
and 7th
people
is usually
like
where it
5th
falls
grade,
apart.
Rick.
Yeah, that's what I just heard too. I was like, okay, so what you're saying is
Yes, Noah is my favorite guest of all time.
I love.
You just put this out there now.
Oh no, I've done it already. I love 5th grade.
I'm
I
so
loved
sorry
it.
that Noah has to leave. All right. Thank you so much.
No,
Oh,
no,
Noah,
it's just,
I will put you back in. Don't worry. I have admin responsibilities as well.
if it doesn't happen in 5th grade, the thing that happens where you wake up out of your childhood, basically, and you look around and you have to reinvent yourself, whether you want to or not. You have to figure out who you are. It will happen in 6th grade or 7th grade. And honestly, one of those has to be miserable. If there's somebody who was like, no, that was great, I think it's a little bit of a red flag. You loved middle school. How did that happen? How did you get
7
there?
and 8 was awful. I hated 7 and 8.
Yeah.
So, hated it.
So I actually, so for me, 5th grade, I think was crazy because my teacher was so bitter. She hadn't had sex in 40 years, and she just was not a happy person. And I realized all of the things about her that I didn't like
over lunch.
No, honey, she was just that damn bitter. I knew it, honestly. But I think she prepared me a little bit more so I was in a private religious school from 4 to 8, 4th grade to 8th grade. So between 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, there wasn't a lot of difference because you were church insulated. But 6th and 7th and 8th were much better for me than 5th. But I understand it. You know, it's just, it's what it was. So what's a charter school, Noah?
Oh, big question. A charter school is a public school, so it's public. They don't cost anything. You don't have to take a test to get into them. It's a long story. They kind of started in the 90s, but they really ramped up in the early aughts. And Los Angeles has a lot of them. They look a little different in every state, but they could be any kind of thing. There's a charter school here that's all about the arts, Renaissance Arts Academy. There's a charter school here that's all about inclusive special education. There's a lot of charter schools in lower income communities where parents wanted an alternative to the local public school that wasn't working for a lot of people. So they can be all kinds of things, but I do want to emphasize that they're public, and you get in via lottery. If there's a waiting list, it's just a random lottery. Yeah.
So if you're a math gifted student, is there a math charter school that you try to get into here in LA?
There are those. Those are still more like magnet, and there's magnet schools still that can pull kids from everywhere. And you do have to take a little test to get into one of those.
Oh, so magnet and charter are different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not easy for parents. I mean, this is what they're talking about at the playground when their kids are 2 and they're thinking, how are we going to get into a high school that's good?
Wow.
It's a long, difficult process.
Wow.
Well,
We
and
did
I
not have
also,
that issue in North Carolina. It was how am I going to get this kid out of my house in the next year? Because I've had enough. I'm gonna make him start trimming the lawn with pinking shears.
that would have been me with my
Would have been.
OCD mother, hon. So, we have here in LA an enormous class distinction. I went to private school from 3rd to the 8th grade. 1 year was a regular private school, and 5 years was a religious private school. But we have a lot of private schools here for really, really, really uber rich people who don't want their children to go to a public school for whatever reason. I'm not knocking them. It's a choice they make. I understand that. How does a charter or a magnet school compete with private schools, or do they?
They do it by being free.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the number
right.
one.
Okay.
Instead
Right.
of paying, and those private schools are
$10,000
unbelievably
to
expensive.
$20,000 a year for most students, and some as high as $50,000. Because I have clients that sent I have one client that sent her daughter to a preschool that was $10,000 a year, and I mean, for most of us, $10,000 a year is a lot of Prada shoes, Rick. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's one pair of Prada shoes. Let's be honest. I could probably do without one pair of shoes. But am I going to give that money to my kid? I don't know about. Well, to your kid, I don't know about that.
Right. Your kid, Rick.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
So is there competition among the public schools versus private?
Yeah, there didn't used to be. Well, the Catholic schools are the ones that have really suffered, which have been less expensive. We're sort of everywhere an alternative, but the charter schools have kind of eaten their lunch.
Well, I'm sorry. Aren't Catholics the one that like to suffer, though? Sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
That's right.
I'm beginning to think that's not tea in that cup. This is water.
I swear it's tea. It's tea. It's tea
Every
as
time
the day
enrollment
long.
goes down, it's a celebration. This is what we deserve, really. It is. Yeah.
Aw.
One of the things I really want to talk about, Noah, though, is with everything that's going on right now in the world, and basically here in the United States, there's a lot, and we did an episode recently about something that happened with a high schooler who unalived herself a while back and who passed away. And I just want to sort of I want to talk a little bit about, in your experience, creating sort of safe spaces for queer students and queer kids. If we can sort of talk, like, what do you do to create those spaces? And even more than that, and we can break this up however we want, what would you recommend? How can we get other people to sort of help us create? What can we do as individuals to help also foster and create these safe spaces?
That's the great question. I mean, I've been thinking about it a lot. I think the first answer I would give is the Gender and Sexuality Alliance model that used to be called the Gay Straight Alliance, the GSA. These little clubs that schools could start and have in their, usually at the end of the day. There is a great organization called GLSEN, GLSEN, that will teach you how to do it and how to run a club. And they're the only ones who really have information about it. And there is good research that these clubs, at the schools that have these clubs, GLBTQ students do better. There's good research about it. It's hard to know if it's chicken or egg kind of thing. Like, is this just a better school environment and that's why they have this kind of club, or did the club make it happen? But it's a great symbol, and it can influence the rest of the student body, I think, if they're done well. That's one thing. And I do actually have some good news that those have been increasing since 2016.
Nice.
There's more of them than there ever have been before.
That is fantastic.
I will say where the places you find the most of them are the Northeast, California, and kind of shockingly, Florida. Well, I might not have guessed that.
Maybe born out of need, but yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
No. Well, so I will say that Florida has always had a healthy bunch of those through the years. I know there are people in Florida trying to pick them off now, but Florida used to be a very blue state that was very, very progressive, especially with education. DeSantis, not so much, but in the past, there was a lot of that.
And Noah, in case you didn't know, and I don't know how many episodes of Queer Magnolias ever watched, but Dan lived in Florida from 88 to 99. Yeah, he has a t-shirt that says 88 to 99.
Yes, and I'm still promoting Florida one voter, but by one voter.
Well, maybe, I mean, I guess I have good news about that. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, in general, the southern states have the fewest.
Yes.
Unfortunately. Yes. And also South Dakota, a couple just more rural, less populated places have the fewest amount. But there are now 9 states where 50% of high schools report having a GSA. In 2016, there were just 3. So it's not enough, but it's
something. Can you tell us the 9? I know you did. Yes, please.
Washington, California, Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, New York, Rhode Island, which actually has the most, something like 75% of high schools.
Nice.
Delaware, Florida, and Washington, D.C. I guess not.
Nice. I love that.
Well, I think one of the important needs or factors for having that for me is sort of trying to figure out, it's such a critical stage in your development, right? And trying to figure out who you are. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about sort of finding your identity and sort of what that entails and why these are important. So.
Middle school is a time of neurological change that is similar to early childhood. It's part of the reason that it's just that way. Your brain is just literally rewiring itself.
It's biology, yeah. It's
just happening. You know, it's hormones, it's puberty, but it's also all of your cognition is also changing. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's a kind of a mystery. You know, why exactly does that equal a kind of? I like to think of it as an identity crisis because it leads to an identity. But you have to sort of dip into possibly, if you're going to change your identity, there has to be this period of who am I and what am I doing? And by identity, you know, I mean, just like, who am I in the world? How am I different from other people? Who are my people? What makes me special and unique? And, you know, just understanding yourself. That's just going on 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and sometimes for a lot longer.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes that settles down and sometimes it ramps up again. You know, it doesn't just stay, but middle school is a big time for that. And, you know, I was thinking about students I taught. Not everybody is ready to, you know, put a name on anything that's going on with them. And you don't know what's going on with them because they can't tell you. They don't know often. Sometimes they do, but often they don't. And so just having a connection, I guess I would say, is the most important thing, and making a connection with students. And honestly, like it's sort of an American school thing to kind of like leave kids alone, I guess, and have a laissez-faire approach. But like, if my kids are in school and they're not participating, or you can tell something's on their mind, I want somebody to be a little in their business. I want them to be, you know, cared about. I want that. To me, that's love, you know, that connection. And sometimes you have to seek it out. And sometimes in 7th grade, you think you want to shut everybody out. You yell at your parents, get away from me, and you slam the door and you're alone with your music. And that feels like the right thing to do. But of course, a little bit of that is good, but a lot of that is not good for you, and you don't actually want that. You do want a connection. You just want you want people to see you in new terms. You want people to make space for you to grow and change, and not tell you who you are, you know.
Amen. Amen.
So just if you can do that, I mean, you don't know that you're doing it sometimes. I was thinking of students that later I learned that they were going through figuring out a queer identity, but I didn't know it at the time. most of the time I didn't know, actually. And I would learn later, and it would look all kinds of different ways. It's distracting at the bottom. It's very distracting, can be, from your schoolwork, let's say. And it just is something that's on kids' minds. Other kids, they find something that they really love, and that kind of takes them through middle school. So like having activities and things that kids can do. I mean, GSAs are great. You also you need a theater class, and you need music class, you need sports classes, you need like those kinds of things.
We don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, right.
For some kids.
So George, you had an art teacher, right? Was that middle or high school? That was
That was high
small
school.
screen?
High school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we did an episode on teachers, and we've all got a teacher that like really, I'm sure, stood out for us and all.
My 7th and 8th grade teacher was critical for me because as I said earlier, I think those were the hardest years for me because I think that's when I was sort of starting to figure out I might be different than everybody else. And I didn't have the words for it. And I certainly didn't have the access to information that kids have today. And growing up in the South, I didn't have that worldview that if you grow up in a larger city, you might have. I don't know if it's a worldview, but you do have a sort of a different view of the world. And she was very critical. My 7th and 8th grade teacher was very critical in sort of being someone that I was very comfortable talking to and could go to, and kept me centered and sane, I would say. So
that's what it's all about. I mean, that's everything.
And I look back sometimes over my life, and I'm like, it's easy that I sound like I'm 200 years old. Shut up. It's easy to get into this space, right, where you're like, everything sucks and my life is awful. But I look at it and I'm like, I feel like honestly, I've been pretty freaking blessed for the most part, because I have had a lot of wonderful people coming in and out of my life that have shaped a lot of my thoughts and opinions and views on the world. So some not so favorable.
Well, I was sent here to help you, hon. I'm guiding you on a path. At least I think so.
Touched by an angel, honey. Touched by an angel.
Touched by the dark angel, honey, the fallen one. But
you know what? I have a question. So, from a teacher's chair or desk, when you look at students, and I mean, we all judge a book by its cover. Did you recognize any?
I have
students?
never done that in my life.
Yeah, honey, you Judgy McJudge your son upstairs. So,
Judy over here, honey.
Did you see children that you knew from, say, the first week of school that would need a little extra attention and
Great question.
and a little bit of nurturing? Because I think, honestly, that queer children coming up, I think teachers see us differently. But I've never had a chance to ask a teacher, so I'm going to ask
that. I have a follow-up to that, but answer it.
Right.
No.
So what did you see from the teacher's desk?
Oh man, I saw a lot of stuff. I mean, I would say yes. Often, quickly. I mean, I had a student walk into the classroom, and on the very first day of school, pointed at another kid and slapped him in the face. Said, "I know you." He needed help. Yes. A lot of help. And then I saw other kids who were acting like Buster Keaton on the first day of school, like really making everybody laugh.
Okay.
Sometimes that's great. Often if it's like right off the bat, it means that they're kind of desperate for something. And it's going to be, it's going to be on my mind because I don't want them to do that. But it means also probably that they need something. A lot of the time you don't know. A lot of the time you really don't know. I mean, that's part of why I started, I would go and write in my journal at the end of the day, because I would see 120 kids in a day, and I would be teaching them, and, having a conversation was kind of something you had to fight to find time to do. And so I would have to look at the clues that I would see, at the end of the day. and try and piece together, like, how is this person, how is student A really doing? What did it mean that they said this? What did it mean that they did that? I saw that they were just on their own. Why was that? It was a lot of like puzzle making, just because there's so many kids, there's so much going on. You can be in the classroom and you still don't know really what happened at the end of the day, because so much has happened. But the grades start to tell you, hopefully. I started looking for students who had trouble reading, number one, because that became my big lens. And that started to look, that could be anything. And, class clown behavior, absolute super charismatic way. That was a good way to hide it.
Danny.
Just staying away. What's that?
Danny.
Yeah. Well,
Danny hides a lot in his Danny charisma.
Every day of my life, baby. Every day.
That's a great tool. That's a great tool if you can develop it. And then some students were just very quiet. I was just writing about a student who just was an absolute class clown, and I was certain he had some kind of neurological disability, actually, because he walked in a kind of different way. He was very different. There was no way you weren't going to see him, and he had decided, I don't want to be made fun of for this. I'm going to own it, and I'm going to be funny instead. And now I own it. But I would talk to him, and I realized he was really smart, actually, and he was a great writer. And I asked him if I could put his writing up and show everybody, because I wanted to use it as a model. And I did it, and he stopped doing all that stuff. He stopped falling down. His handwriting improved overnight, and he thanked me later for like giving him permission to take himself seriously, is what he said. I remember other students who, they just you didn't notice them for a long time. And honestly, some slipped through the cracks, didn't notice them in time, and then they stopped coming to school, and you didn't know why. I have students like that I still wonder about, from 18 years ago. And then some students just won't let you ignore them. I had one student, we were taking a test, and I was just talking to him, actually. I still talk to him. He's an adult now, but he took a cheeseburger out of his coat during the test. You're not supposed to do that. A warm cheeseburger.
Why, Noah? Why are you not supposed to do that? What does that have to do with the test?
It's just the grease.
Explain that to me right now.
It's made on those wonderful, those delis in the Bronx where there's bacon grease on everything. It was delicious. I really wanted a bite.
Did you confiscate it?
No, I let him eat it. But then he took out a second cheeseburger. Two.
Oh my
another
God,
one out,
that's
and he ate the whole thing. And I just watched him, and he sat down and did the test.
Did he
and
pass?
No. No.
Oh, damn it. I was like, I wish he passed. That's his secret. That's his superpower.
Not then. But, I realized I was going to have to develop a relationship with this guy, and I didn't know what was going on with him. He was a really unusual character, but I just would ask him to stay after school and talk to me and try and explain what's going on. He would do stuff that was very disruptive sometimes. And he couldn't explain it. And I remember one day I just wrote in a big green marker, just like, you have got to explain to me what's going on. He had like knocked over a bookshelf that day in class. And
my goodness.
I thought we were making progress, and I heard myself saying, you've betrayed me. I said some crazy stuff like that. Never thought I'd ever say a word,
So dramatic.
Whatever came out of my mouth. That was dramatic. But I was like, you have to tell me what's going on. And he just sat there for a long time and finally started writing and didn't say a word to me, but just passed it over. And we just ended up doing that most every day. And I started to let him work on a short story that I had started in the classroom. It was a short story about a horror story of a beast attacking all the kids, and he just would add chapters every day.
Girl, that was my class right there.
Yeah. Well,
as you talk, you are my 7th and 8th grade teacher. That is exactly who she was for me. She did those things for me. So keep going. Sorry, but
Well,
I
it's
needed to
hard to
say
put
that.
your finger on it, isn't it, Rick? Like, what exactly was
Mhm.
it? It's a lot of little things. It's demanding sometimes that you talk to me. Please explain something. You will feel better. He became the best student that I've ever had soon
Wow.
after that, and is now working in schools and is great, just a great person. But
And he
yeah,
probably
we
thinks
talked
you're the
later.
best teacher he's ever had too. I'm going to guarantee you that.
And
You
I
gave him that
Yes.
space. You didn't quit on him. You gave him that space. So
Yes, and it's important to say that there are teachers out there just like that, Noah, that do those things. And you are a blessing to students because most students are never seen.
Oh, Danny's getting emotional.
I mean, most students are
I
really
got there
never-
first, girl, because it's coming. I'm like, stop, goddamn.
I mean, honestly, the fact that you took the time to do that is a blessing.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah.
It's gas.
So,
It's
This
gas.
is a
It'll
good,
pass
this is a
away,
good
man.
podcast.
Right.
This is good.
I actually did have a follow up to that, though,
That's
that
right.
I
You
did want
do.
to sort of talk about. What I wanted to talk about is I think that it's important. I think it's an important question, like to be able to ID those students that you feel like probably need a little extra attention or nurturing or something that you in the beginning of the school year for you, but also something. I'm going to step back. It's a little bit of a bigger conversation. And we've talked about this a few times on the show, but I want to say somewhere back in 2019, 2020, something happened in conservative politics where they realized the conservatives realized that they lost the war on the gay agenda, as it were, or whatever, when we won gay marriage, and that was not going anywhere, and they were always looking for something that they could kind of get everybody sort of galvanized on, even across the aisle. And what they found was that the trans community was exactly where they could put that community, where they could put that focus and shine that light. And it actually had the effect that they were looking for. Transphobia has been something that has blown up since, I want to say, 2019, probably even earlier than that, but really kind of took off 2019, 2020. And now we're seeing, as coming out of the pandemic, all of these people, like LOT. I'm not going to say it out loud because I don't want them chasing us. But the LOT folks are installing themselves on school boards and doing all of this stuff to just. I call them agitators and to cause chaos. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that and sort of what can we do, I guess, is the question I have. I don't know if I'm articulating that the right way.
Yeah, no.
There's a new focus, right?
It's absolutely true. It's become one of those issues. I feel like it's sort of like in 2016 with illegal immigration, that just like even who was sort of surprised at how it riled up the base, but if it works, let's go with it, because who cares?
Yeah.
I think it started, there was a lot of energy that parents had. They were mad at schools for closing, and people were just mad in general about COVID. A lot of people were mad about the uprising, and they were mad about a lot of things. And I think a lot of folks figured out that they could channel that anger from parents into winning school board races. Moms for Liberty is the biggest group that does that. I will say, and George, we were involved in it just about happened in Glendale, actually. Two very extreme candidates lost, but they were close.
Yes.
One of them was close. They were remarkably effective because people ignore school board elections. Those are usually people who are running unopposed. They just, you want to do it? Great, it's yours. Nobody wants to do this.
Right.
I would say a big thing to do is like pay attention to those elections, any local elections, but school boards in particular. I will say the wave seems to be receding. The win rates for candidates endorsed by these groups are going down. They're lower in 2023 than 2022, but But yeah, it's been bad. It's been a bad thing. And I think if you watch certain channels or you're on X/Twitter, you would think that, every teacher is as far left as could be. And it's not actually true. Teachers, yes, are more likely to be Democrats in most states for a bunch of reasons, but teachers actually can be pretty conservative, actually, in many ways. Schools are kind of conservative places, they just end up being in a sort of like small c conservative, just like we're dealing with kids. People are careful.
I love that analogy, the small c conservative.
We're not trying to blow things up and do things radically different because it's too much going on, and these are children's lives and parents will be mad at us. So like, that's actually how most schools are still. That's not that different. So the attacks on schools and teachers are just out of whack with reality, is what I would suggest. People are ingesting bad media and believing all kinds of things.
So I'm in Glendale for work twice a week, and I'm very attuned to what went on this year with the Glendale School Board. And it was so much BS. It was insanely crazy. There were so many people there who were pretending to be something they weren't, simply to agitate the conversation. And there were all these news outlets, from the small ones to the large ones, didn't matter whether they were conservative or liberal news outlets, were picking up the same stories and regurgitating them, and they were not true stories. And it's so heartbreaking. And I mean, we have a responsibility to educate ourselves, especially grown-ups. We have to know what's really going on, and we have to be able to.
Okay, I'm glad we're recording this, because how many times are you like, I don't know how to do this, can you come do it for me? And that's not educating yourself, darling.
Well, honey, that's different from the school board to you coming and doing some social post that I can't quite figure out how to make it work.
It's not even that. It's Google Drive. Like, oh my God, I can't find this file. Do you see the search bar in the upper right-hand corner? Try that. That thing that goes across the entire top of the screen? But whatever.
So I'm trying to change.
I digress.
All right. No, that's okay. So for the audience, I'm trying to change my Google signature box, and I keep Googling it for it to tell me how to do it. And it keeps saying punch the button on the left, and there's no button on the left. It's on the right.
Mash it. It's because you're not.
But it's
mash it, not punch it.
Can you change my signature box for me?
Me? No, I can't do
I don't
that.
care who, anybody out there in the ether that can help poor old Dan, please help him. He's educated on the Glendale School Board, just not the Google signature box.
Honey, you know what's important.
Well, it's exactly what Noah's been talking about all night. You've got charm, you've got charisma, you can make everybody believe all these things, but when it comes down to the most basic thing, like your signature, you can't do it.
She's the moment. She's an
that
icon.
is everything that Noah's been talking about since he joined us tonight.
You know what? People do things for me because I'm pretty and charming. It's the end of the story. Don't be
no, they don't. People do things with you because they want you to go away.
That's okay.
Either way, she gets what she wants. She gets what she wants.
Thank you, George. Thank you. So Noah, I will say that in the Facebook land, one of my high school English teachers is on Facebook, and I friended her.
Has her work cut out for her.
Right. I friended her a few years ago, and she sent me a private message, and she said to me,
"Stop stalking me."
No, she probably thought that, but what she said was, "I want you to know what a delight you were, because you were always so fun and funny in my class, and there were days where things just didn't go right, and I could always depend on you to see something different." So yes, I was that child, and I own every minute of it. Yes.
That's lovely. I've had students like that. I've enjoyed saying that too.
I will say that I have found several. I found a college professor, and I also, in high school, there was my music teacher I know is gay, because I know that now, but I didn't have the words for it in high school. But I actually Googled way down a rabbit hole and found him, and we've been corresponding some, and it's a really nice correspondence, because Tony's only about 8 years older than I am. It was his first teaching job.
Lord,
And I thought,
1900.
oh, poor thing.
1900. I love it.
Right. I thought, poor thing, Eastern North Carolina. And I said that to him, bless you, you were stuck there. And he came back to me. He said, I came out there and I found my first boyfriend when I was teaching at that school. And I can tell you that I have nothing but the fondest memories of it. And I was so impressed and shocked, honestly, because I thought, oh my God, you came from a Yankee state to settle here, really? And he was like, it was some of the best times of my life. And I thought, wow, isn't it funny how some teachers see things differently than students do?
All right, Noah, I have a question for you.
I'm ready.
What
Thank you, Dan.
questions do you have for us? Have at it. This is your chance. This is your time. You can ask us anything you want. Doesn't mean that we're going to answer it, but just ask us anything you want. Keep in mind, Dan's answer will probably run about 17 minutes and 22 seconds long.
That's
But go
it.
for it.
I have a writing degree.
What
Sorry, go ahead.
if you could go back? Well, I've been interested in the power of the Gender and Sexuality Alliance. Can I ask you, would you have attended those meetings?
Hell
Honestly?
yes. Hell yes. I wouldn't think twice about it. Yes, I would have.
Never, because I grew up religious.
Right.
So as far as religion for me, and we've never really actually talked about my religion on this show to a degree. I've scoffed at it and I've made comments, but at 13 years old, when I turned 13, my mother brought our preacher over to the house, and she said, listen, I'm not going to make you go. You're 13 years old. I'm not going to make you go to church. I'm not going to make you do these things. I'm going to have you sort of figure this out for yourself. And what do you want for you? And it's like, ask your questions and do what you want. And so I asked 3 questions about the Bible that was not logical to me, and he stammered and couldn't answer them. Now, maybe if I'd found someone who was a little smarter about the Bible, and Stephen, who's on here, is like, oh, 666. Well, there's that. But but he couldn't answer them in a way that satisfied my curiosity. And so I kind of stepped away. I was like, I don't think this is for me. And I stepped away from the church at that point, and I've never been religious after that point. So to answer your long story short, to answer your question, Noah, yes, I would have been all in on that. I knew at 16, 17 years old, I knew I was different from most kids. I think at 17, I figured out that was gay. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time after that to get comfortable with that fact and to live my life out. But I knew at that age what I was, and I think I would have done it if I'd had access to it. We just didn't have access.
I personally would have been president of the club.
Yes.
Madam
President.
Well,
come to order.
I wish we had the opportunity. Well, I doubt I would have gone because I was so worried about what people thought of me.
Sure.
Not only me, but my fellow
students. But you also came out at a much later time in your life, right?
I did, yeah. So, I mean, there wasn't a day in all of my high school career back in public school that I wasn't catcalled with some derogatory name. Not one day. 4 whole years of it, every single day. I like to tell people, everybody knew I was a fag long before I did because they told me every damn day. So, but it's just one of those things. I wish we'd have had the opportunity because, when you, as a student, when you see someone that you recognize, I mean, of my 5 best friends, 3 of them were gay and I didn't know it. I mean, it's just the way it was. There were 6 of us, 4 of us were gay and, or one's trans. So, I mean, this is who we were. We hung out together, but we didn't understand it. I was president of the Bible club. I mean, it's just the way it was. I hid in plain sight.
Now who's 666, Stephen?
You will always be 666. I'm 999.
We have some friends that have joined in the chat, and I have the nickname of 666, which I embrace dearly.
Are those your angel numbers?
They are, yes. They're all 3 times I tried to get in heaven.
That's right.
That's how many times I knocked each time. He's like,
Stupid.
nope.
Do you think your schools could have done a better job?
Yes.
Yes.
Hell yes.
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 I will. I do. Sorry, Rick. I do
No, go
want to.
ahead.
I do want to say that, you know, kid, especially when you get to high school, kids are able to hang out a little bit more with teachers than they are, say, in elementary or middle school. You know, you change classes in high school, and you gravitate towards that teacher that sees you. And there were teachers in my high school that saw me in their own way, and they saw that I was trying really hard to be a good student and a good kid, and they fostered that and educated me. I mean, I really look back on some things. I tell people the most important class I had in all of school was typing. I'm a good typist. It's what I do for a living. I need
She
to
just
type.
can't figure out her Google signature, but she can type it up when she gets there.
Type like the wind, but you know.
but and not to make excuses. Yes, I think my school could have done better, especially high school. I think that could have done a lot better. But also looking at where I grew up and the time in which I grew up,
Yeah.
I don't know that they knew how to do better. And I think that's important. It's different now because of the access to information and what we know now versus what we knew then. Granted, it was different for Danny in 1902, but for the rest of us, it's I don't want to make excuses, but I don't think that I don't think they knew better, if that makes sense. I don't think they knew better. But yes, they definitely could have done better for sure.
And one thing,
real quick, I want to call
real
out
quick,
some
real
comments
quick,
here.
girl. Make it quick. Make it quick.
There's some comments here that Steven said, no, I am still 6'6", you're 6'9". And Wally, great point, because Wally and I grew up in sort of the same area. He said he would not have felt safe to go to a club at that point in time.
Yeah.
And Steven says the same thing. Not back in my day, we had to hide for fear of our safety.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens when you're in your petticoat.
Also, you know, so having grown up in Eastern North Carolina, where sexuality wasn't the only issue, there was a lot of racism. I do look back and I feel sorry for some of the teachers in my high school who were teachers of color who couldn't feel safe amongst themselves. They had to teach slightly differently because they needed to make sure they didn't offend the white students. And I really do feel a great sympathy for them, because it's like they were stepping on eggshells themselves, just like we were. But there were some of those teachers in high school that I was so very close to, because I think we had a bit of a simpatico. You know, we were.
And I want to go back to what something Dan was saying earlier too, as part of what I was saying, is even in growing up and all of that, I had certain teachers who I feel like saw me, much like how you know it, sort of talk about how you see these students. They saw me, saw what I needed, and make sure I had it. And so while the school itself maybe didn't do that within its systems and how it functions, there were definitely teachers that made sure I got what I needed. And I
think that's nice, Rick. But I think, like, when you're in a 6-period school day and you've got 2 teachers that see you, and the rest of the periods you're just in the crowd, I mean, that's hard. It's
very hard. It is. I'm not saying that every day was I'm not saying I went home every single day skipping home.
Sure.
Like, la, 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 Laura Ingalls, here's my... That was not how it was. Not even close. So,
yeah, I think that schools could do better. I think schools could do a lot. Obviously, it's been a minute since I've been in school, since I've been in public school, middle school. Obviously, it's been a minute, so I'm sure things are very different now, or at least I like to hope that they are. But there were teachers. I had one teacher that I think was as homophobic as you would ever have as a teacher, and she hated me. What do you do, Noah, when the teacher is the bully? Like, what happens then?
Principal should fire them. That's really hard. I'm really sorry, George.
Yeah, I mean,
about that.
it's it's a real way to bring down a podcast. Apparently, is to bring that.
No,
up. But
well,
yeah.
no, I don't.
it's
You
But
know
it's
what? I don't think it's bringing it down, George. I think it's reality.
I think it's a solid point, and it is like if you have those teachers in your life, what do you do? Where do you go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always go to Mr. Rogers, and I realize that this is, very Pollyanna, but I always think about Mr. Rogers. Look at the helpers. Look at like when bad things happen, who are the people that are helping? And so I try to always remember that when I get very like in the, in 2020, I got really mired down in all the politics and everything that was happening around us. And I just got to the point where it was like, I don't know how to get out of this. And then I just remembered that I was like, I got to stop looking at what's happening. I got to look at the people who's actually who are the people that are helping. And that's how I pulled myself out of it. But
So,
Well-
George, so in July, should we find this teacher?
Well, don't think I haven't thought about that.
not on the podcast because it's live, please. We can talk about that afterwards. Anyway, we are.
No,
coming
we
up
could
on
do.
55.
And if they're dead, we could June squib them.
I don't know what that means, but
I don't know
okay.
what that means either, but we're not going to dive into it because we're
Oh.
coming up on the end of this
Do you
episode.
know what it means, Noah?
So Noah,
Schools can't do it alone. That's what it means. That's what it means.
Noah,
That
we're going to give you one last question or comment or statement before we wrap up. So on you. Spotlight's on you, darling.
Rick's not drinking tea. Just don't worry about it. You can take your time, Noah.
Things are better. I will say that, and it's because of the work that many people have done, not just in schools. George, the LGBT Center, schools can't do it alone. Changing the culture allows schools to improve because it's a reflection of the culture. Schools are. Things really are getting better. A lot of the schools in Los Angeles right now, bullying is out. Bullying is not cool anymore of any kind.
Thank God.
It feels different. It's not all done. It's not all over. It never will be. But the work that you do to raise awareness, to this podcast, it all actually adds up. Little details that change the culture and make it so that a teacher like that will stand out as weird, at least, and hopefully unemployable soon too.
Amen to that.
Amen. Absolutely.
Well, Noah, it has been an absolute delight having you join us this week. And I just want to say you're welcome back anytime. So you want to come back next week?
Sure. It's been a great pleasure, you guys. I love you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Noah.
we love you too, Noah, and thank you so much for being here. It
And
is
you know what? We actually kind of adore your kids too, but I'm not going to say that. Oh, I just said it in public. Oh.
Don't let them know. Let them work a
I
little
won't say that
harder.
to their faces.
Yeah.
So how close to middle school is the oldest one?
He's in first grade. He's
Okay.
seems like a long way away, but I'll blink and he'll be there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know it was Christmas last week. Oh, thank you so much,
right.
Noah, for being here. This was wonderful.
Thank
guys.
you. And
Thank you,
George, thank you
George,
so
for
much for
the
being
suggestion.
here. Thank you, George, for being here. Danny, whatever. I'll see you later.
Fix my signature box, heifer.
All right. It's been a delight. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.